My name is Krystalline Napier, and this is my birth date speech. In 1995, Satoshi Tajiri created the concept of Pokemon. Later that year, on April 27th, the card game was released. Its popularity allowed him to also create the Pokemon Yellow video game, which was a cartridge game for the Nintendo Game Boy Color. The popularity of Pokemon Yellow was wildly successful and led to the creation of 19 other core games over the span of 21 years, as well as several spin-off video games, including Pokemon Snap, the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, and several other things. Clothing, movies, a TV show that spanned 10 seasons, and other paraphernalia that you can find even in stores like JCPenney's today. In 2016, Pokemon released the Pokemon Go mobile app, which allows users to experience virtual reality and catch Pokemon in their everyday world. This helped to restart the hype around Pokemon, as well as the release of 2 new core games in November, Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon. All of this allowed the Pokemon Company to become a multi-million-dollar franchise. This is common knowledge to almost anyone who had a child during the 90s or the early 2000s, or for anyone who has played video games and is popular with pop culture. What those people may not know is that Satoshi Tajiri was autistic. In 1995, I was born in Abilene, Texas. I loved Pokemon as I was growing up. My brother and I would beg our father not to cut the grass because tall grass was the only place you could catch Pokemon. Of course he did it anyway, and he placated us by buying us more Pokemon games. So Pokemon was a big part of our childhood. It was an easy game to play, nothing too complicated, and also allowed for equal access across children of many different abilities. When I was 14, my parents began to realize that there was something different about me. We went to the doctor, and several tests later, I was diagnosed as a deaf individual. They gave me hearing aids. They told me where I could get sign language classes to help me, and they also had me practice with an audiologist on how to keep my speech perfect, to prevent it from degrading as my hearing loss continued to progress. They wanted me to be the perfect hearing person and to not let anybody else know that I could not hear as well as the rest of the world. Before I lost my hearing, I was a confident, strong individual. Afterwards, I began to lose my confidence. I didn't know who I was as well as before. The reasoning for this is before I lost my hearing, I had plenty of role models, plenty of people who were the exact same as me and who were extremely successful. The president, singers, songwriters, musicians, video game creators, all of these people who you saw in everyday pop culture were normal. They could hear, they could talk. Afterwards, there were no deaf people in the spotlight. You couldn't turn on the TV and see somebody who was just like me. I didn't have any role models. But that should have been okay. I should have been able to go to school and get the same support that I had always been getting. But whenever my school found out that I was now different, they gave up on me. All of a sudden, they didn't believe in me. They didn't care that my grades started to slip because, oh, she's deaf. She won't be able to make it up. I was losing who I was. I was becoming depressed. During this depression, I turned to one of the things that I had always found solace with, and that was video games. Ever since I had been playing Pokemon as a child, I had found a love for all video games. But here's where I encountered another problem. Audio on a TV becomes distorted through hearing aids, and it's hard to understand, which is why subtitles exist. On most video games, subtitles are tiny. They're almost impossible to read unless you are right there at the TV. So I turned back to my handheld video games. Pokemon has no speech. There's no real audio in it. There's a little bit of music, but really, if you can't hear the music, there's no loss to the game. Finally, there was something that I could still do, something that I still loved ever since I was a child, and I could still love because it allowed me to access it. I was able to read the words that came across the screen, and I was experiencing the same thing as all of my hearing friends. After a few years, I discovered that Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of my favorite video game, of the video game that I had gone to whenever I needed to feel comforted, to feel the same as everyone else, was not the same as everyone else. He was autistic. He was differently abled. And that's where I found my inspiration. I realized if he could do it, then I could do it. While autism and deafness are not the same thing by any sort of idea, they do have a common ground. Whenever a child is diagnosed as autistic, the parents are told, "We're sorry, your child failed the test. He or she is autistic." And it's sad. The doctors make it seem like this big deal, this big awful deal. And the same thing happens whenever a child is diagnosed as deaf. They're told, "We're sorry, your child failed their hearing test. They're deaf." And then both sets of parents of the autistic child and the deaf child are assaulted with information from all sides about how to improve their child, about how to make them normal again, how to make them perfectly abled again. For me, this was the speech lessons, struggling to teach me how to sound normal. And while they seem to have worked, they made me extremely uncomfortable in my skin. So being able to see that this other person was not perfectly abled allowed me to realize that he can be successful. He created a multi-million-dollar franchise. And surely if he, a video game creator who worked on not only Pokemon, he worked on Mario, he aided in Zelda, and several other popular video games that people still play every day today. If he could do it, why couldn't I? Surely we weren't that different if we could still be successful. Now, I don't want to be a video game creator like Satoshi Tajiri. I don't even want to be anything close. But without his inspiration, without seeing that he could be something, without seeing the fact that even though people gave up on him, people told him he couldn't because he was autistic, and people told me I couldn't because I was deaf, but he did it anyway, and I was going to do it anyway. And now I already have a college degree, and I'm working towards my second one, and I am going to be a successful individual. But without his inspiration, I never would have overcome my depression and started going to college. I never would have allowed myself to dream again. Perhaps I would still be sitting in my bedroom, lost, because who was I? What was I going to do? But now I am able to stand here today and give this speech as a strong-willed individual, knowing who I am, knowing that I will be successful, because even if you think that there's something wrong with me, even if you come up to me and say, "Oh, you're deaf? I'm so sorry," I'm going to look at you now and I'm going to say, there's nothing to be sorry about. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm differently abled than you, yes. But that doesn't make me bad. You don't need to fix me. I am who I am, and I am going to be successful. Thank you.
Well, that's a good speech.